The Alabama Crimson Tide come into Madison as 16-point road favorites. Now, when I start to look at this game, two different shades of red in Madison, big noon Saturday on Fox. When I really start to look at this game, there's one thing that really means a lot to me that pops into my head, and maybe an analogy that I want to make when breaking down this Crimson Tide and Badgers game. Look, I'm an outdoors guy, specifically in the summertime. We know what I do in the fall, right? We know I'm here, right, in the fall. But in the summertime, I like to get outside. I like to go hiking. I like to go biking, specifically out west, right? When I come to a trail, right, there's usually a sign right at the trailhead that says what to expect on this hike. Well, you're going to go up 1,000 feet. It's going to be a little bit rocky here. It's going to be 4 miles. It's going to be a loop trail, and you're going to come back here. And that's what you can expect on this beautiful hike. I feel like this Alabama-Wisconsin game, and everybody that's kind of breaking this one down, that's kind of what it says on the sign. Everybody, and including myself, you'll see probably here in just a minute, saying, well, Alabama's just bigger. They're just faster. They're just stronger. Wisconsin's trying to figure it out, and you don't figure it out against a team like a top 5 squad against Alabama this early in the season. So if you follow that path and you follow the sign and what everybody has kind of drawn out for this football game, you are not going to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, right? If you just take that trail and you play this game clean and you're fairly even in the turnover battle, you're fairly even in penalties, right? You are not going to out-talent, outscore, out-whatever. You're not going to out really anything Alabama in this particular football game. So if you follow that trail, Alabama is going to beat you. And they're going to beat you by a lot. Wisconsin has got to find some shortcuts. Sometimes when you're on that trail, you see maybe a path that isn't as well maintained, but it is a path that you can cut across and get ahead of Alabama. Wisconsin needs to find that path. Wisconsin needs to find that shortcut. Okay, let's take a look at Alabama's game against the South Florida Bulls, for example. Alabama lost 3 fumbles in this game. Alabama committed 13 penalties. Now, South Florida at Bryant-Denny Stadium really didn't have the talent, and it wasn't the right setting for them to really take advantage of all of those Alabama mistakes. Now, specifically turnovers. If Wisconsin is able to get turnovers and get them early and get this Madison crowd into this game early, that can be one of those shortcuts that Wisconsin can take. If Alabama once again is undisciplined and commits a good amount of penalties, Wisconsin needs to stay clean in this particular football game, right? You have to take advantage of these opportunities. Not saying Alabama will give Wisconsin these opportunities, but if Wisconsin can have that shortcut, specifically creating turnovers early in this game with guys like Hunter Wohler back there and Ricardo Hallman back there, maybe via the passing game. We'll get more into that here in just a little bit. You have to take advantage of that. And Wisconsin, if you get those opportunities, holy man, you need to finish in the red zone. This is a Wisconsin team. They've been in the red zone 10 times this season against opponents Western Michigan and against South Dakota. 10 times. They've gotten into the end zone with a touchdown 5, right? So they need to be able to, once they're in the red zone and they have a short field and, even on a longer drive, if you get to the red zone against a team like Alabama, ask South Florida when they were settling for some field goals, you need to get into the end zone. If Alabama opens the door slightly, if Alabama shows you the shortcut across the trail, you need to take it, and you need to take it with a vengeance. So, kind of maybe diving back to when these two teams are a little bit more even walking along the trail, Alabama has a big advantage in the trenches, right? Wisconsin had been this program over time that had been built on trench play, great trench play. They just don't have it. They just don't have it. Look, we've talked about a lot of offensive line power rankings, right, with LSU and Texas and some of these other games that we've previewed so far this season. Alabama's right in that category, man. They've got NFL players all across this offensive line. To put it into perspective, Pro Football Focus graded Alabama as the best offensive line in the country. You've got On3 has them at number 4. You've got Athlon Sports has them at number 5. 24/7 Sports have them at number 6. You know how many top 10 rankings Wisconsin got for their defensive line? 0, and it wasn't particularly close. Now, the injury of James Thompson Jr. does not help anybody up front for the Wisconsin Badgers. Elijah Hills, the transfer, has played well and leads the team, I believe, in sacks, right, to start this season. So he's kind of been a little bit of a surprise up front for Wisconsin. But you look at games against Western Michigan, you look at games against South Dakota, there were times in those games, and a good amount of times in those games, where the Broncos and the Coyotes were able to establish the run game and were able to win the battle at the line of scrimmage. And if they can win it like that, I'm not saying it was the entire game in those games, but there was a good chunk of time where they were able to establish some things. If they can do that, just imagine what Alabama can do. And it's not just the offensive line. Alabama's got some explosiveness in the run game that Wisconsin needs to find a way to contain. You look at Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, man, they can hit some explosive runs. If they get past that first level, they have that explosiveness to be able to get 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. If these Wisconsin linebackers, the Jaheim Thomases of the world, the Allegros of the world, right, if some of these guys, right, aren't plugging these holes, and if they're not making tackles within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, there's a very good chance Alabama could hit some explosive runs, and that's the last thing that Wisconsin needs in this game. Now, Alabama can beat you over the top, right? But now, especially if they can dominate the line of scrimmage, if they can run the football very effectively, it could open a world of hurt for the Wisconsin Badgers, certainly within this football game. Let's talk about the pass game, because I think when we talk about Wisconsin, the strength of their team, and we said it, right, during previews, during the offseason and everything, that the strength of this Badger defense was probably in the secondary, with guys like Ricardo Holman at corner and Hunter Wohler right at safety. Xavier Lucas, a freshman, has looked really good so far for them as well. Now, another big key for Wisconsin, considering all that I just laid out there, is you got to limit, just overall, I think you got to limit some explosive plays. But, man, Ryan Williams, what is he? He's like the next Braylon Allen, right? The next 17-year-old. He reclassified. Imagine what he'd be doing in high school football right now. It's utterly insane, right, what he's been able to show on tape so far this season. So you need to limit some of these big plays down the field, because you could see it, right, where Alabama, they can establish the run. Wisconsin comes up to try to stop it, and then it's one-on-one matchups over the top to some of these wide receivers. Jalen Milroe can throw the ball. We know he's got a big arm. We know he can get it deep. So that could be a recipe for disaster. So you got to contain the explosiveness in the run game, in the throw game as well when you're taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's talk about Wisconsin on the offensive side of the football. Now, I was watching that Alabama-USF game, that Alabama-USF tape a little bit. I saw their quarterback scoot a little bit in some quarterback run game. Now, there was some scrambled stuff. There was some design stuff. And now, Tyler Van Dyke, I think, is a little bit more mobile than maybe you and I thought. You've seen some run stuff from Phil Longo so far this season. Let's get Tyler Van Dyke a little bit mobile. Right, I'm going to talk about TVD and what he needs to do in the pass game specifically, but I want to see him get some read stuff going on, right? We saw that RPO action against South Dakota, right, where he faked it, and he could have either ran it or threw it deep. He saw the matchup to C.J. Williams deep, fired it deep for a touchdown. So I want to see Tyler Van Dyke get on the move. Now, of course, he's not going to run it every time, but you need to be unpredictable, and there has been points for Wisconsin so far this season. I'm not saying it has happened all the time, but there's been points for the Badgers where they have seemed a little bit predictable at times. Now, are the Badgers, right, this has been a big talking point, are the Badgers holding things back for this Alabama game? Boy, you better let it rip. If that is the case, you better let it rip. But I will say this. If you are a Wisconsin team that's holding stuff back, you should be a good enough team that you should not be losing. Even if you are holding things back, you should not be losing to Western Michigan in the fourth quarter. That should not be a game, no matter how good of an FCS team South Dakota is, that you should have a little bit more of a cushion than that. So the big thing about Wisconsin's offense so far has been, well, we got Tyler Van Dyke. We got this gunslinger at quarterback, a guy that we know has a big arm, but Wisconsin just is not stretching the field. Now, here's the thing about this in particular game. Number one, I want to see them stretch the field, right? That's going to be, I think, when Wisconsin opens it up down in the downfield passing game, I think this offense is going to start to reach its potential, whatever that may be, whatever you think that may be. But here's the thing. When you throw the football down the field, Alabama's secondary is very good. Keon Sabb, remember, Big Ten fans might know him from Michigan. Okay, he had 2 interceptions in the game earlier against Western Kentucky. It's a pretty good secondary back there for Alabama. So you got to be careful, specifically in that Western Michigan game. There were some throws that Tyler Van Dyke made that could have very easily been interceptions in traffic, and we knew that coming in, that Tyler Van Dyke was going to be that gunslinger type. You know, he's going to be a lot better than Tanner Mordecai getting the ball down the field, but he might throw it into coverage a couple of times. We haven't seen it. Wisconsin has played it pretty safe so far this season, but I think one thing in this throw game, beyond the deep ball, I think that they need to do, hey, let's get the ball to some of our really good slot guys in space. Let's get the ball to Will Pauling and let him make some plays and move the chains. How about Tretch Kekahuna? I think he's a guy that could possibly have a big game. Look, I look at the X and the Z on the outside, and that's the thing with the deep threat down the field. Why I maybe don't think Wisconsin could have a great day throwing the ball in the matchups down the field, because I look at their guys on the outside, and they're fine. You know, the CJ Williams of the world, the Bryson Greens of the world, the Vinny Anthonys of the world. They're fine. I just think Wisconsin's a lot better in the slot than they are on the outside. Like, Will Pauling is a very good slot receiver. Tretch Kekahuna, the sophomore. I mentioned him before. Get these guys. If you are going to get in short to medium passing concepts, build some confidence. Keep the chains moving that way, almost as an extension of the run game, right? High percentage throws, keep it going forward. And let's talk about that run game here for just a minute. Now, Tawee Walker did not play last week against South Dakota. We'll see if he's ready to go. They need him to be ready to go because he is their RB1. With all due respect to Ches Malusi, Cade Yakameli had a good game against South Dakota. You need Tawee Walker in the backfield. And you need to be able to have that run game and that threat where maybe Tyler Van Dyke then could pull. And that's where we talk about that quarterback mobility, whether he's throwing on the run or whether he's keeping it himself. I think having number 3 in the backfield for Wisconsin is almost a must in this game. The stars need to come out and shine for Wisconsin. All right? Whether it's Ricardo Hallman or Hunter Wohler, Jaheim Thomas on defense, or whether it's Will Pauling and Tretch Kekahuna and Tawee Walker or Tyler Van Dyke on offense, I think the stars need to have a big day. And they need to have a really big day, I think, to be able to hang with the Alabama Crimson Tide. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it starts with the shortcut. You can't beat Alabama going stride for stride on the trail. You just can't. You need to find a way to get ahead. And then Alabama at the end of the day is saying, how'd you get there so quickly? Well, we took advantage of your turnovers. You committed penalties. We didn't. We were disciplined. That's how maybe Luke Fickell gets to maybe the third quarter, late in the third quarter, early fourth quarter, where maybe this is a one-possession game in the end of it. Now, I'm going to finish off with this. There's a lot of attention on this Wisconsin program right now. This is a Wisconsin program that's trying to get it together in year 2 of Luke Fickell. The jury's still out on Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator right now. I think that's putting it kindly compared to what some other people in Badger Nation have to say about Phil Longo right now. It's just, this program is in the spotlight. Big noon. There's not a ton of other big games, so I think a lot of attention is going to be drawn to this, and Big Noon Saturday is the most watched time slot, right, in college football anyway. I just would hate Wisconsin to have all of this attention on them and they lay the egg of all eggs and have this thing be something like 42-14. I want to see them be competitive because I think that if they are competitive, if they cover the spread in this game, I think that gives Badger fans some optimism. If we keep this thing within 2 touchdowns and we see some semblance of a team that can hang with really good teams. Like you got Penn State on the schedule. You got USC coming up next. You got Oregon on the schedule a little bit later on during the season. If you can hang with Alabama, I think it shows the nation that the Badgers are certainly making strides. But if they get blown off the field, that could be a pretty bad look for the Wisconsin Badgers. All of you know what kind of red that I bleed, right? I grew up in the state of Wisconsin. I love Madison just about as much as any city and any area in the country. I spent my weekends in Madison, Wisconsin. I want to see this program do so well. I mean, if they somehow come away with a W in this game, wow, would the narrative completely shift, right, for Wisconsin. That would be a defining win for this program. That would be a defining win for Luke Fickell. Do I see it happening? Probably not. But hopefully they're competitive. Hopefully they can hang with the Alabama Crimson Tide in this matchup.
Thanks for watching Big Ten TED, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten TED to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.